are going to be painting our fun little flower child stargazer gnome here. So I have primary colors, black, white, red, blue, and yellow. And then I'm also just using this magenta here. I'm going to use a variety of brushes, really mostly a flat brush and a round brush. And then you can use a toothbrush or some little splatter brush for your stars there. So with that, let's gather our supplies and let's paint. All right, we're gonna start off our painting today with the background. So the background's gonna be this night sky at the top and then kind of this grassy area at the bottom. So I'm actually gonna start by kind of tracing out my little gnome girl because I need to know where she's gonna be. So I'm gonna take some pink paint here because her hat is pink. Kind of a purpley pink, but I like it. And we're just tracing this out. So her face, when I do her face, her head, or say her nose is going to be right about here. And that's always the most prominent part of the gnome. And we're going to paint over the top of this. We're going to paint over the top of this later. I'm just kind of tracing it out so I know where it's going to be. So this is going to be her nose. You're not going to see her face. So her little hat is going to come over her nose and kind of her little gnome hat. And then it's going to be kind of this little curvy kind of bumpy thing kind of coming up there. Give it kind of a wide brim here. That's where her little gnome hat's going to be. And then her face is going to be down below here. So her hair, she's going to have these little braids coming down. Right, and they're actually going to hit the ground, which makes them super cute on both sides. So just kind of these parentheses going back and forth. Then they're going to hit the ground down here. Her little gnome dress is going to come out here a little bit on both sides. And then come over her shoes here. So that's where our gnome girl's going to be. Not going to worry about my mushrooms. They're going to kind of be over here a little bit, but I don't need to worry about those yet. And then I'm just going to decide where my background's going to be. So my background is going to be just kind of back here a little bit, and this is where the grass is going to start in the nighttime. So I'm going to go ahead and make my night sky now. I don't need to worry too much about Gnome Girl because her little face is going to end right here, and then that's all going to be dress. We're not going to worry about arms too much on her. Maybe her nose is going to be a little bit bigger. Going to be there. She's going to have a little smile right there, and we're going to have a little flower here. So we're going to have an elbow kind of showing right here, and then she's going to have this flower right there. So just kind of an idea of where things are going to be. And you are welcome to do that with a light pencil or whatever you want to do it with. But I'm going to paint my night sky now. So I'm going to start with a little bit of black here at the top and just a tiny bit of black. I'm not going to do much. But I want it to be pretty dark up there. And then I'm going to transition down from that into like a purple. So I'm going to take some blue and mix some red into it, just so it's a really, really, really dark purpley blue. And I'm going to mix that right into the black. So it's just a super dark sky, because we're going to put stars up here and we want them to show up. So I'm going to really quickly just kind of outline my hat in this purpley color, just so I know where it goes. Maybe a little bit around her braids here. I'm not going to worry about the flower. But I just want to see, I really don't want to paint that dark purple over her because it's just going to be too hard to cover. So that is where my night sky is going to be. This is a wrap canvas, so whenever you have a wrap canvas, don't forget you want to get your sides and your top and your bottom. So back to my sky, I'm just going to kind of fill in this dark purpley color. As I come down, I'm going to let it get bluer and bluer. So at the top here is going to be more the red and blue purpley color. Just going to mix that in. But as I come down here, I'm going to kind of brush away from her hat. Need a little bit more water in my brush. And I'm going to let the sky get bluer and bluer as I get down here towards the bottom. Up at the top, I really want it to be this more dark purple color. And I'm gonna speed this up a little bit. I'm just gonna go from purple down to blue. I'm gonna speed this up a little bit while I finish it up. So down here at the bottom, instead of mixing this purpley color, I'm just doing blue, and the areas right around the hat, I'm pulling away from the hat so I don't go into the hat, because the hat's kind of a pinky color and I don't want it to be too hard to cover. Down here, this is just straight blue now. Down here at the bottom, just the phthalo blue. And I'm coming right down to where my grass area is going to start. This will also help little blades of grass to show up because it's not too dark down here. And around her braids, and then that's her dress there, so that's why we kind of traced it out ahead of time. All right, we're going to go ahead and put our stars in now before we do our grass, because we don't want stars on our grass. So I'm just going to go ahead and use a little bristle brush. You can use a toothbrush if you want to. You just pull your thumb along the bristles. I'm going to use this bristle brush here. Just going to take some white paint. Show you when I clean. I'm going to take some white paint, mix it in with some water so it's really watery. I'm going to tap it out there, and I'm going to fling it very close, because I want small stars, to my canvas. Grab some more paint. Okay, now I want a few little bright stars in here, so I'm going to grab a tiny little brush here, teeny little brush, and I'm going to take a little tiny bit of white paint, and I'm going to choose a couple of stars, and I'm just going to dab, pull down, make kind of a little cross, you know, up there. Kind of an asterisk, I guess would be a better way to put it. I'm going to let it dry, and then I'm going to go back and dab some little white in the middle of it. But I'm just going to pick a couple of spots to make a couple of bright stars. I think right here. So just pulling the paint in a little asterisk around. And then when it dries later, I'll go and dab just a little bit of white right in the middle. Just to give it a little bit of a glowy look. That'll be fun. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and do my grass underneath of her. And all I'm gonna do to do that, because I'm just using primary colors for this painting, is I'm gonna mix some blue and green together, or blue and red, yellow together. Holy crap, can't seem to talk. So a little bit of blue, a little bit of yellow mixed together, more yellow, because I wanna make green. And then I'm gonna add just a tad bit of red to that, and that's gonna make more of an army green. And I'm just gonna brush this. This is just gonna be our first coat, but I'm just gonna brush this on the bottom here. So underneath where her little braids are gonna go, right at the bottom of her shoes, underneath of her dress there. On the sides. So I'm just gonna kind of trace around her dress. Her little hair is gonna pop up there. And then this is just gonna be my line. There's gonna be our little, we're gonna have our little mushrooms here, but we're gonna let this dry, and then we're gonna paint white over where our mushrooms are gonna go, and then paint those on there later. But we're just gonna get this color on here. Just for an undercoating, kind of, just our line. I'm gonna do this on both sides. Right here, kind of want it to be the same on both sides. And then trace her little dress. Because it's just an undercoating, it's not a big deal if it's perfect, but you definitely just want to cover the canvas. And that'll make our second and third coats really easy. And we want this to be a bit darker so that it provides a little bit of shadow for our grass. Okay, so there's our undercoating. All right, so that's our background and our stars, and we're just gonna let that set for a second. And we're gonna go ahead and start on our little gnome. Now I'm gonna show you on my mixing plate here, we're gonna make a little bit of a color for her face, and I'm gonna show you how to do that. So I'm gonna take some yellow and some red, and that's gonna give me a little bit of an orange color. I'm gonna add a little bit more yellow to that. I want kind of a macaroni and cheese color. Then I'm gonna add just a tad bit of blue, and see how that turns it pretty green. Now we obviously don't want her face green, so the solution to green is red. So we're gonna add more red to that, and you can see now how it's starting to make kind of a brown color. So if you're too green, you want to add red, and I think a little bit more red because we want her face a little bit on the pink side. So now we have this pretty little like burnt sienna color. So again, how we did that was we made orange, and then we added a little tiny bit of blue to it. Now when I add white, it's going to give me this really nice fleshy color. And I'm going to do just a tiny dot more red because I want her face to have a little bit of a pink glow to it. There we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and paint this on her face. Don't worry if your mixing color isn't exactly right. Don't add too much paint at a time. Just a little bit at a time until you get the color you want. And if it just is too frustrating to you, then you can buy a tube of flesh colored paint. But I always think learning to mix color is a good idea. I still want it to be a little bit more pink, so I added a little bit more white and red to that. And I'm just gonna come right around her braid there, right up to where her nose is gonna be. And actually her nose is gonna be a bit bigger than that. Add a little bit more white to it. And then her nose, I'm gonna take a little bit more of my brown color here. Her nose is gonna be pretty big. Kind of can't see it right now, but you will. I'm gonna take a little bit of blue and a little bit of red and make some purple over here. Then I'm gonna add a little bit of yellow to it. A little bit too green, so that means I need more red. And I'm gonna make a dark brown. Now, if this is frustrating to you, you can just make dark brown. Add a little bit of black to it there. There we go. So I made a little bit of purple this time and added some yellow to it to make a really dark shadow color. And I'm gonna take this really dark brown, which again I made by using purple. So I did blue and red together. and then I added a little bit of yellow until I got this much darker brown, and this is what I'm going to use to create her nose. Right there. And I'm going to use the same color right under the bottom of her chin. This is going to be our shadow color. Then I can go into my original flesh color and just kind of blend those in, and that makes the bottom of her chin there, which is where her dress is going to start. Because this is shadow color there. Then I can take my original flesh color I made here and blend it right in with that dark color for her nose. Because I want it light on top and dark at the bottom. You can even add a little bit of white if it's still too dark, but notice how I'm kind of brushing in a round circular motion here, because I want it to look like her nose is dark on the bottom and light on the top. So my dark color goes at the bottom of her nose, and then I just transition to my lighter color at the top, and when I'm all done I might even add a little bit more white to the top of her nose, just to give it a real highlight. So there's her little nose. Just kind of paint in a circle. So it's shadowed. And then if there's any little places on her face you missed, you can go back and get those now too. But don't lose your shadow color. You definitely want to transition down to the dark at the bottom where her chin is. And if you want to grab a little flat brush, you can, just to smooth it out. I'm just using a round brush to put the color on, but if you want to grab a flat brush, it can kind of help just smooth that out. And then I'm going to go back and just add a little bit more of that dark right underneath of where her nose is going to be. Don't want to lose shadows, and lights are what make a picture great. Okay, so that's where her face is going to be. That's her fun little face, and we can go back and play with that a little bit more again later. We're going to let that dry. Now I'm going to go ahead and paint her hat and her dress. So for her hat and her dress, I'm actually using a deep magenta. You can do pink, or you can use red and purple to make, or red and blue to make a little bit of purple, whatever color you want. I kind of love this deep magenta color, so I'm going to use this. And I'm going to go ahead and just use a little flat brush to put that on with. And I'm just going to do one coat. Obviously my brush needs some water. So I'm going to go ahead and grab some water, and I'm just going to fill in right around her braids here. So I'm just going to kind of outline where her braids are going to be so I don't mess that up. And this is probably going to take 2 coats. And then right over her shoes. Well, we're probably going to put some shadow down here later, but don't forget her little braid is right here. So I'm going to leave a little bit of space where her braid's going to come up. And then I'm just going to fill this part in on this side, because we're going to see some of her dress over here. And then I'll have hair there, so that's fine. And we'll come back and fix some of this later if we need to, but we're just going to get this color in right now. First coats, it's okay if they're a little bit messy. Especially with these see-through colors, and this magenta is definitely a see-through color. We're going to have some mushrooms there, so that's not going to be too much of a big deal. I'm going to come right under her little chin here. And I'm just going to fill this in. Okay, that's our first coat. Obviously very see-through. Not gonna worry about that too much right now. But I'm gonna do the same thing with her hat now. So I'm gonna go ahead and come up here to her hat and outline it. Go over her nose, over here. And then just go ahead and fill it in. I'm gonna make a little bit of a in there. And this is first coat, so it's gonna be pretty see-through. Magenta is a pretty see-through color. Okay, that's gonna take a couple, 3 coats, and that's all right. We're just gonna let that dry for a second, and we're gonna go ahead and work on her shoes and her braids. So her shoes are black, so that's pretty simple. So I'm just gonna go ahead and grab one of my round brushes here. I want to wash it off real good. So I just have a little round brush here, and I'm gonna go ahead, I think this is just a number, what is this? Number 5 or 4. I'm gonna go ahead and just fill in the black on her shoes. So just a little upside down U and then a flat bottom, and that's gonna be her shoes here. And I'm just doing straight black. And I'm gonna do both shoes the same way. So just kind of an upside down U. You can see I'm gonna need a little bit more of her dress right on that side, but that's easy to do. Fill in her black shoe right there. Looks like one shoe's bigger than the other. There we go. So there's her little shoes. Let those dry. And then I'm gonna go ahead and start on her braids. So on her braids, I'm gonna use brown. Now you can make brown just like we did up here. You can make some orange, which I'll actually just show you how to do that. So very similar to how we made flesh color, but I'm just gonna grab some yellow and a dot of red. Red's bossy, so you don't need very much red. You can see how quickly that made orange there. Grab a little bit more yellow. And then I'm gonna take a little tiny bit of black and add that to it. And when I say a little tiny bit, I mean a little tiny bit. Now you can see that looks very green. The solution to green is red. So when I add red to that, it makes a pretty nice little brown. If you feel like it's too orangey, you can add some yellow or a little bit of black. But we have a nice brown color there. So I'm gonna use this brown color that we just created, and I'm just gonna kind of outline her braids because her hair is gonna be blonde, but it's gonna have this little bit of brown in there to create some highlights. So I'm kind of just making little figure 8s here. And that's gonna make it look like little braids when I put the yellow in there. And we're gonna take these all the way to the bottom. And then at the bottom, I'm just gonna kind of flip it up because her hair is gonna kind of flip up off of the ground there. Now I don't really want these to dry. So I'm gonna grab straight yellow without washing my brush. And I'm just gonna go back and forth, side to side, inside my figure 8s. And just let the brown paint kind of mix in. I don't want it to mix totally in because I want it to look like her hair is just kind of streaking with the brown. So you can see I'm just kind of following that figure 8 pattern, and I'm allowing the brown paint to kind of mix in with the blonde. We're going to come back later and add a little bit of white to this, but for now, you want it to look like this blonde is coming right out underneath. So I'm just going to take straight yellow. I'm just picking it up with my dirty brush and just brushing it right over that figure 8 to make it look like she has little braids coming down out of her hat there. I'm going to do this all the way to the bottom. And then at the very bottom, we're going to put a little hair tie in here later, but for right now, I'm just going to kind of flip this up as if her hair is kind of hitting the ground, a little Rapunzel-like here. So just a little flippy up to make it look like her hair is hitting the ground. She's so cute. And we're going to come back and do a second coat on this hat, so we're not too worried if it's all perfect right there. But I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So back to my brown that I created. And if you don't want to create brown, you are welcome to just use brown paint. But I just wanted you to know how to make it. So again, it's just orange with a little bit of black mixed in. And if you end up with it too green, red is the solution to green. If you end up with it too orange, then you can just add a little bit more black to it. We're down here to the bottom, so we're going to kind of flip this up. Where her hair kind of flips up on hitting the ground there. And then I'm going to do the same thing where I'm just going to go back and dip right into my yellow paint with my dirty brush. And I'm just going to brush this yellow right into the brown before it dries. And we're going to give her her little braids here. And don't over mix, because you want to have this fun little kind of variegated look to her hair here. Where it looks like she has these highlights to her braids. And then when this is totally dry, we'll come in and do just some little white highlights to it. Okay, so that's her hair, and we're gonna let that be for just a second. I don't wanna do our mushrooms yet because if we do our mushrooms right now, we're gonna get some of this yellow mixed in. So we're just gonna pause for 1 second, and I'm just gonna go blow dry the hat and the dress. Okay, so before we start on the second coat on the dress and the hat, I'm gonna take my little tiny brush again and go back and finish these little stars. So this one over here, I'm just gonna put a dot in the middle. I'm gonna wipe my brush off, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and redo that asterisk by going straight up and down, kind of, cross in the middle. Let that be a bright little star there. Just doing a second coat on that, little dot right in the middle to make it look like a star. And then I'm gonna do the same thing over here, little dot in the middle, and then pull down and up, side to side. Make a little sparkly star there. So we just have a couple of little fun sparkly stars. And you can pick a couple of other spots if you want some brighter stars. It's fun. A little, there. You could even put a shooting star in here if you want to. It's kind of tempting, but I'm not going to. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna take my round brush or my flat brush. You can do either one here. Maybe I'll use my flat brush. And I'm gonna use my magenta again. So this is just a really inexpensive, heavy body that you can get at any craft store called Deep Magenta. And I'm gonna go ahead and take that, and I'm gonna do a second coat here on her dress, and you're gonna be able to see how different the second coat is from the first coat. It just is gonna cover so much better. So I'm gonna come right under her chin here, and then just go ahead and fill in with the magenta, carefully going around the braids because I finished those. You can even go around the braids first if you're concerned about getting paint on those, but we're going to go back and do a highlight on those too, so if we have to fix them, we will. So I'm going to just go around my braids here real quick. Now I'm going to go over my shoes at this point, and this is my last coat, so I'm just going to go ahead and make sure I don't have any little white spots showing. And any spots down here between her little shoes, and then over the shoes. And then a couple spots on the ground here where I just want that dress kind of hanging on the ground. It's kind of cute that way. Around her hair, and then I'm going to paint this outside part of her dress around her hair here. My second coat. Cute. Now right under her chin here, we are going to do a little bit of a shadow, but we're going to wait just a second to do that until I get this whole coat on here. Gonna go ahead and grab our hat. Second coat on that. You can grab a little bit of black or a little bit of just blue and add it to your magenta. And that's going to give you this shadow color that I'm doing here. So I grabbed a little bit of black and blue, mixed it with my magenta. Now if you're doing a different color, you can add whatever shadow color you want. But I want one side of my hat to be shadowed. So I'm going to add a little bit of black or just a tiny bit. You don't want it too dark. And I'm going to go ahead and just cover my whole hat with magenta and let there be a little bit of dark on this side and a little bit of dark on the bottom. And then just straight magenta to blend in the middle. And we're gonna add a little bit of white for highlight when we're done here. So I've added that little bit of black or blue. You can do either one right there. You can see it to that shadow spot there. And then I just have straight magenta and I'm bringing that down and around. I want to make sure I don't have any little spots where there's no paint coverage. You can always add a little bit of water to your paint if you feel like it's not flowing nicely. And then down here, part of her hat. You can add a little bit of shadow there if you want, a little bit of black or blue. Oops, that's a little too blue. Have a tad bit of black there, just shadow. And if it gets too dark, just grab a little bit more magenta and mix it in. That'll make a nice shadow color there. Bring it up over her nose. That's where it's going to be the most shadowed, so I'm just grabbing a little bit of black and mixing it with my magenta right there. You can see it's adding a nice little shadow color. I'm just blending it all together, so we've got some nice shadows in there. There's her cute little hat. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just wipe my brush off, grab a little bit of white and add it to my magenta. And I'm going to do just some fun little highlights on her hat, because highlights and darks are what make so I'm just doing my brush sideways like this. There's going to be a highlight here. I'm going to do a couple of little wrinkles in her hat here, but definitely here at the top. Then just grab straight magenta and brush it over that to give it a nice highlight. So I'm going to grab straight magenta here, let there be a highlight there, and then straight magenta here, and just kind of blend that right into her hat. So the top of her hat's definitely lighter. More straight magenta. And now I'm just brushing in the direction of the hat, so it kind of creates these fun lines. Blend it together right there. And then just right over the top. Wherever you feel like you need a little more of your paint to blend it together. But you can see now we have a nice shadow down here, highlight there, and then just right up into her hat. So super cute. I'm just gonna go over a couple more spots where I feel like it didn't quite blend right, but it's pretty good. I'm gonna leave that be. Now down here on her dress, I'm going to take a little bit of white, not much, but just add a couple of little folds in her dress there, so it doesn't look too boring. So just a couple of little lines. I'm definitely going to add some white out here on the outside, where the sun, well not sun, but the starlight might be hitting it a little bit. So just a little bit of white and magenta together. We're going to be adding a little flower out here. That's going to be our next thing. But this side I'm not too worried about, because we're going to be having our mushrooms right there. So right here we're going to add an elbow, and I'm going to take my brush, which is pretty mooky at this point, grab some magenta. This is just a flat brush. I'm going to point it down right on the outside here and just kind of pull up. And then I'm going to kind of make some parentheses. And this is just, all we're doing is making an elbow. So kind of parentheses side to side. And I'm just gonna leave that like that, because that's her elbow, and then we're gonna put a little daisy up here at the top later, as if she's holding a little daisy. Okay, so there's that. And I'm gonna wash that brush off. Now I can see a couple spots here on her face where I need to fill in her facial color. See right there under her hat? I'm gonna take my little round brush and some of that face color, if it's still dry enough here or wet enough here, and just kind of fill those in, because I don't want those highlights. I don't want that to show there. I'll fill that in. Try and match my colors pretty good here. Just anywhere you feel like you missed a little bit of color. Very good, I like that. Okay, now we're gonna give her just a tiny bit of a smile. So I'm gonna grab just a tiny bit of black on my round brush and kind of roll my brush on my plate sideways so I get a nice little point to it. I'm gonna add a little bit of water to that. So water down some black and then just kind of roll your brush so it comes to a nice little point. And I'm just gonna just do a lot, not even a full smile, just a tiny little smile there. We could even, if we wanted to, this is optional and I didn't plan this out ahead of time, but underneath you could even do just a little pouty lip. Kind of cute. There, pretty cute. All right, we're just gonna leave that. If you feel like you have your shadows pretty good, go ahead and stop there. I feel like under my nose, I just need a little bit more of a shadow there. And then I'm gonna take some white, like we talked about before. I'm mixing it in with my flesh color here. It's almost dry. And then I'm just gonna do a couple of little highlights on the top of her nose. Losing my flesh color here. Just gonna do a little bit of light right there on the top of her nose. So it's nice and light. Okay. Let that blend in there. Could blend forever, but I promise I won't. Okay. That's pretty good. And there she is. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and finish off her hair here. And we're gonna, well, no, you know what? I think we're gonna wait and do her hair last. I lied. I'm gonna do a little bit of a highlight on her shoes. So I'm gonna grab a little bit of white, mix it with a tiny bit of black. And on the top of each shoe, I'm just gonna do a little bit of a highlight to make it look cute. And just a little bit of a U on the top of each shoe there. Give it a little bit of a highlight. And she's pretty much done. The last thing we're gonna do for her is her daisy here and her hair. But we're gonna wait to do her hair till we do our grass and our mushrooms. So we're gonna do our mushrooms next. Now our mushrooms are red, which means that we have to paint them in white first, because if we don't, we're gonna end up with them looking green. So I'm gonna take some white paint here, and one of my mushrooms, the biggest one, is going to be right here. So I'm going to do kind of this just upside down mushroom here. And this one, you're not going to see much of the bottom of this one. He's going to be just kind of straight forward, but just a little bit. So a little bit of the bottom right there, and he's going to have a skinny base. Got a little bit of the pink from her hair in there, it doesn't matter. We're going to be painting over this. So right now I'm just going to fill this in with white. Now the underside of the mushroom is actually going to be tan. So if you want to use a little bit of your flesh color or the brown color that you created, this would be a good time for that. I'm just going to grab a little bit of that orangey color that I created for my flesh color and paint that on the underneath side. So you have your main mushroom color here, your main mushroom here, and then underneath I just brought a little line from side to side, but my main mushroom part right here, you can see I stopped there and he comes down from the base, because we're going to see where it stops here, and you can see that base coming through, and that's what's going to make it look like the underneath part of our mushroom. But the top part here, I'm just going to leave white, and that's going to let me paint my red later. Just kind of fill that in. So that's mushroom number one, and I'm going to go ahead and paint the base, that just yellow mixed with a little bit of red, and then I put some white in there, and I'm just going to paint that in, kind of that orangey brown color. And we're going to come back and paint it later, but there's mushroom number one. Mushroom number two, get my picture here, he's cuter. Now he's going to be on the side over here. So the little top part of him is going to be, there's his little top part right there, right? Just that little U shape. I got to look at my picture here. Just that little U shape there. But then his little top part kind of curves in like that right there. And then he has kind of this like upside down U here. So he has this top of his head there, and then it comes up here, and then you have this other U shape, and that's actually the underneath part. And that part here is going to stop right there. So it's kind of a U, and then almost like a spaceship on that side. And then he dips down to the ground here. So it just kind of comes down here and up. And then his base comes sideways like this. And then his top, the top part of him actually right here kind of curves up. So here's his top. You're going to be able to see this a lot better now. So here's his top part right here. Okay. That's the top part of that mushroom. It's pretty cute. The underneath part, which I'm going to kind of do my orangey tan color, is over here. So you see a lot more of the underneath part of this, and it stops right there at the base. We don't want to cover the base. And then you're going to have some more of this underneath part down here at the bottom. And then the base part, which I'm going to just do my orangey color here with a little bit of white added in so you can see it, is right here. He is a cute mushroom. Now, if you want to do a different kind of mushroom, you go right ahead. But this is, I love this guy. Okay, that's him. Then we're going to do a third mushroom, and that's just going to be a little teeny tiny guy. And he's just going to be right here. So he's just a little bump with two little sides. You're not going to see the underneath of this one at all. He's just right there. Okay, so there are our three little mushrooms. Nice. We're not going to do the daisy yet. That's going to be our very last thing. We could do an underneath coating of it though. So using this same round brush, which I've been using now for a bit of time, I'm going to make a little bit of gray. We could do just the underneath coating. So take some white, mix it with a dot of black, and you're going to make a gray color right there. That's my gray color. I'm going to add a little bit of water to it. So what I could do right here with my brush, this makes a perfect daisy. With my brush right there like this, my number one, point it out and kind of just push down on your canvas. We're going to do white over this later, but just go ahead and push down, and you let the shape of the brush make the daisy. This will be the undercoating. We'll make a little stem later, but you can see that her outfit's not quite dry yet, so got some of that pink coming through, which is fine. We'll just paint over it white later. And that is and that's where our daisy is going to go. So that gives us a good spot there. Now, all right, so we're going to take straight red paint, and I'm just going to keep using that same round brush because he's working pretty good for me right now. And I'm just going to cover the top part of my mushrooms. Make sure you don't do the bottom part. That is a whole different color. So we're just doing the very top portion. These will take 2 coats. So we'll work on other things while we're waiting for them to dry. But just the top part of your mushroom here. Just straight red. And I'm using more of a cool red or a blue red. You want shadows and lights on this, I'll show you how to do that, but it's not necessary, so you don't need to do this part. But I'm going to take just a little bit of blue and yellow and make some green, and I'm going to add it to my red. So can I show you what I'm doing here? Make some green with blue and yellow. And then I'm going to add some red to it, and that's going to make a dark red, almost like a purpley color. But I'm just going to take a little bit of that, a little bit too much there, and just put it on the bottom part of my mushroom where I feel like there would be a shadow. And I'm just going to brush that in with regular red, just around the bottom part. And then I'm going to take my flat brush, this guy here who's nice and clean, and I'm just going to brush it up a little bit all along the edge towards the top of the mushroom, just a little bit to give it a shadow color there. Not necessary. You don't need to do this. I'm just going to brush it across. But I like a little bit of shadow on the bottom part of my mushroom. So totally up to you. Just kind of blending that in there. And I'm going to do it to this one down here as well. So I'm going to take a little bit of that color, especially down here at the very bottom part where it's towards the ground, and just do a little bit of shadow color there. And then I'm going to take my flat brush, grab a little bit of red, and just kind of blend it in. So I have a little bit of shadow. So that's a little bit of an advanced thing you can do. You don't need to. You can just leave them straight red. And if you do it and you don't like it, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. If you do it and you don't like it, just let it dry and cover it up. No big deal. It's the nice thing about acrylic paint. Okay, so a little bit of a shadow down there. I like that. Do it again right here. A little bit more shadow there. It wasn't quite dark enough. And I'm just brushing it up towards the top and then brushing across. Very lightly. Give a little bit of a shadow. Okay, and then on the little guy, I don't know, I might do a tiny bit, but certainly not much. Just right around the bottom there. Okay. All right, and there's our shadow color, and I'm gonna drag a little bit of that behind on the back part. So that little line in the back part there behind, I'm gonna add a little bit of the shadow color to that, because I feel like that would be darker. Okay, we're gonna let that top part dry for just a second. We're gonna add a little bit of highlight to it, but not yet. I'm gonna work on these stems here in the middle. So, you guys, we made that orange color where we took, got a lot of mixing plates going on here, where we took yellow and a dot of red and we made orange, right? And then I added a tiny bit of black to that to make brown. And we're gonna do that again here. And then I'm gonna add a little bit, got a little bit too orange there. I'm gonna add some white to it here. Got a little bit more white paint. Because I want it a little bit lighter than that. Okay. And that's the color I have. I want to add a little bit more yellow to that, I think. There we go. Almost that flesh color, kind of. What I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the stems that you can see. So one side's going to be a little darker than the other on these. But first I'm just going to paint them all this one color. So just the parts that you can see. So there's this guy. Now I'm going to add some more white paint to this. Maybe a little bit of the yellow. And on this side here, I'm just going to do some little slashes, just straight down. So it almost looks like, you know how mushrooms have just a little bit of a slashy kind of look to them. I'm just going to do a couple of little straight down slashes with the white that I added in. You can use a different brush if you want. So on this top side here, it's going to be lighter. And then on the bottom side, I'm going to add a little bit of black to my color. And do some little slashes, but they're going to be darker. Because I want it to look, especially at the very bottom. So just some little slashes up there. Just so it has a little bit of a variegated look to it. And you can go over it a couple times. I'm going to take a little bit of the lighter color again and just kind of go over it until I like it. Just some little slashes. So it has kind of that weird mushroomy look to it. Okay. Then I'm gonna, now on the inside, what we want to do, just going over it a little bit. You gotta play with it till you like it. We're gonna have little pieces of grass coming up there too. On the inside, all of these would kind of come towards the middle. So I'm going to take a little bit of that brown that I made and just kind of roll my brush like we did before. Add a little bit of water to it and kind of roll it with this dark color. And I'm just going to do some little slashes from the outside into the middle so it looks mushroomy, right? Because the lines just kind of come into the middle. So I'm just going to make my little, take a little bit of that dark color there and make some little slashes toward the middle. You know how the underside of a mushroom has those little slashes. And then right underneath here where the red part is, on the top of the stem, I'm just going to make it a little bit darker because there would be a shadow there. And that is the under part of a mushroom. Now, if I'm going fast, which I'm guessing I am, pause the video, rewind it if you need to, and replay it so that you can get this the way you want it. It doesn't matter how long it takes, there's no hurry. Play with it until you like it, and if you do something you don't like, you can wait till it dries and then you can fix it because this is acrylic paint and that's what's amazing about acrylic paint. But I'm going to go on ahead and do the other two stems here. So I can only see part of this stem here. So I'm going to go ahead and paint that. And the ones in back would be a little bit darker than the ones in front because they would have more of a shadow on them. And then this one, you can see a little bit of it up here, top, but it would be a bit darker. And then I'm going to do my little slashes. And this guy down here, I'm just going to do a little tiny, he's going to have little bit blades of grass and things, so you're not going to really see much of him. Okay. Okay. And then I'm going to do my little lines to the middle. On this guy, I love when people, okay. Bring our little lines in toward the middle here on the underneath part. Just a little bit of a shadow at the top. Okay. All right, and I feel like our mushrooms are pretty dry at this point, so I'm going to go ahead and just do a little tiny bit of highlight at the top, not much, but I'm going to take a little bit of white and some red, mix them together to make just a little bit of a light pink, and I'm just going to do a little bit, and you can use red to mix it in, just a little bit of highlight at the very top. But it's Starry Night, so you're not going to have a lot, just a tiny bit. And then as soon as those are dry, we'll add our little dots to them. I'm going to do that to the other one as well here, but his highlight would be more here. Just a little bit, and then on this guy, our little guy, right at the top. Okay, it's just a little bit of highlight, not much. And then any places you feel like you need to fix your red on your mushrooms, but I like these are pretty good. Let them be. Let's go ahead and finish her braids. So I'm going to wash off my brush really good. I don't want any red or brown in there. And I'm going to take some white and mix it with a little bit of my yellow. But I want it mostly white. So it's just going to be a really light yellow. Add a little bit of water to it here, and I'm going to roll my brush, and I'm going to come along my braids now and just add some little highlights. So kind of like that figure 8 we were doing earlier, and you can kind of do a mixture of just straight yellow and the white yellow just to add some highlights to her hair. So grab a little bit of straight yellow and then a little bit of your yellow with the white in it, and just kind of braid them together on her braids here to create a really fun look for her hair. Got a little bit on my hat there, but that's easy to cover. Be careful on your mushrooms though. You definitely don't want to get it on the mushrooms because the hair is behind the mushrooms. So be careful there. Come out from behind the mushroom there. Now on this one, you're not going to really see her hair on the ground because, oops, got a little bit of green in there. You're not going to see her hair on the ground because the mushroom's in front. So I'm just going to stop right there at the top of the mushroom. And I'll probably take a little bit of red right there just to make sure it doesn't look like my hair is coming up in front. Okay, so that's that one. And now I'm going to go ahead and do this one over here. Same thing. So going back and forth between yellow and my yellow with the white added to it to give my highlights. Your daisy is going to be in front, so we're going to do that in a minute. So just kind of going in my figure 8 here, grabbing my yellow. And on this one, we're going to do a little hair tie, but we're also going to do some little, her hair is kind of hitting the ground here. So I'm just taking I'm just using that same round brush I've been doing and just letting her hair kind of curl up here. You can even have one little piece if you want, kind of hit her toe here. It'd be kind of cute. And we're going to put a little bit of a hair tie there, so you can have little strands of hair here and there, you know, it might kind of fling out. Oh, she's so cute. All right, so I'm going to put a little bit, I don't know if I want to do pink or black, but I think I'm going to do pink. That magenta color. I'm just going to do a little bit of a hair tie right here. I'll have to do a couple coats on it probably. Maybe I'll grab a little bit of white and add it to my magenta so it shows up a little bit better. And there's her hair tie. I'm just going to go back and forth with it. Kind of just slash back and forth so it looks like she has a little bit of a hair tie around her hair there. So I'm just doing magenta and white. There, she got a little bit of hair tie there. Cuteness. Okay, so we're going to let these continue to dry. I'm going to work on my daisy here. So same brush. I'm still using this little round brush. It is an 8. And I'm gonna just dip it in straight white paint here with quite a bit of paint on there. And right over the top of the gray, and if a little bit of the gray shows through, that's all right, but I'm just gonna push down and pull. And I'm gonna do just a couple of times there to make each little petal. So push down, pull, and then just kind of come down each side of it. And I'm gonna do this all the way around in a circle to make our little daisy. Kind of like the way you would do your fingernails, you know, you kind of come down in the middle and then off on each side there. And if a little bit of the gray shows through, it's actually a good thing because that's your shadow color. And then this one here. Now I'm going to go ahead and make the center of my daisy. I'm going to fix this one petal here. I'm making sure all my petals are the same size here. One got a little bit big, but it's okay. And this guy, there we go. All right. Pretty happy with that. Wash off my brush. And then I'm gonna go ahead and do the center. So I'm gonna grab a little bit of red and yellow and mix them together to make an orange. Less red, more yellow. And I'm actually just gonna do with this same little round brush, I'm just gonna do little dots in a circle. So dot, 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 dot in a circle to make the center. And then I'm gonna grab just some straight yellow. I can get it on my brush here. And just do little dots on the top, just to give it a little bit of a highlight, but I'm not gonna mess with this one too much. So just straight yellow now over the orange, just dot, 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 dot. And that's gonna give it a cute little center. And then I'm gonna take a little bit of green, and we know how to make green, right? Blue and yellow mixed together. And I'm gonna take and roll my brush with a little bit of water on it, just like we've done. My palette's a mess here, but just roll my brush in the green, and that's just yellow and blue mixed together. And then I'm just gonna do a little, just a little swish there to make it look like a little bit of a stem on my daisy. I was thinking about doing a leaf, but I don't think I'm going to. Just leave it like that. Okay. So there's our little daisy. Now the last thing two more things we're gonna do. Sorry, I'm gonna push this up here. I'm gonna do the little white parts on my mushrooms. And I'm gonna do that the same way I did the center of the daisy. So I'm gonna grab white paint. If I can get just some white here. Just some white paint. And I'm gonna just do dot, 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 dot. So I'm just dotting my brush in the circle pattern that I want. It looks like my red is still wet because I am getting pink. So I'm gonna hold off on this until my red's dry. So I may have to just run over and blow dry this real quick. Okay, so now I'm just gonna get straight white paint and do just some little dots. There we go, that's better. And we're just gonna do these little white spots on our mushroom here. So just dot, 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 dot. It's the easiest way to make little round circles. And I am gonna do several of these. You can do some tiny ones. And then some bigger ones. Just by dotting in a circle until you're happy with the way it looks. But I'm gonna go ahead and speed this up and just do a bunch of little dots on my mushrooms. Okay. All right. Now, last thing we're going to do is we're going to add some little grass. So we already have the background of our grass here, so the rest of this should be really easy. I'm actually just going to go ahead and grab a flat brush, and I'm going to make a whole bunch of green paint by just adding some blue and yellow together. And add some water to it here. Water it down. And I'm just gonna do these little slashes up just to create some little green paint. Little green blades of grass. I'm gonna do a couple of colors on this, but we mostly just want to get just some little blades in front of her feet here. And this is the last little part of our painting. So I'm going to speed this part up so you don't have to watch all of it. but I will come back, slow it down when I do the next layer. All right, and that is the last of it. We're gonna do a couple little blades up here. Maybe even do a little yellows up there, but just a little bit here and there. But I think with that, she is finished. Cutie pie, I just love her.